Max Verstappen walked away from that crash in Austria with a smile. A four-time world champion, DNF'd by a rookie, championship hopes potentially shattered. And he was smiling? What the cameras didn't catch was the conversation that followed, a conversation that might have just changed the entire landscape of Formula One. Because that wasn't just Max being gracious to Andrea Kimi Antonelli, that was a future Mercedes driver having a chat with his potential teammate. But here's the kicker, when you look at the current F1 grid, Mercedes isn't just Max's preferred choice, it's literally his only choice. And that desperation might be exactly what forces his hand. Even more explosive, his own father, Jos Verstappen, is reportedly pushing him toward the exit door. Act 1. The setup. The year is 2024, and Max Verstappen's Red Bull empire is crumbling. Not with the dramatic collapse you'd expect from Hollywood, but with the slow, methodical erosion that makes champions desperate. Red Bull's dominance? Gone. McLaren's flying. Mercedes is resurging. And Max? He's driving a car that finished third in the Constructors' Championship while somehow dragging it to a fourth consecutive title through sheer will. But here's what the paddock has been whispering about for months. Toto Wolff hasn't given up on his obsession. The Austrian team principal has been hunting Max Verstappen for over a decade. He missed him as a teenager, watched Red Bull snatch away the greatest talent of a generation. And now Max might finally be vulnerable. But more importantly, he's trapped. Because when you analyze the F1 grid, there's literally nowhere else for a driver of his caliber to go. And the most damaging blow of all? His own father is telling him it's time to leave. Meanwhile, in the Mercedes garage, George Russell has been having some very interesting conversations. Not about his contract extension, those talks have mysteriously stalled, but about something far more explosive, the possibility that the most dominant driver in Formula One might be switching sides. Act 2. Rising action. Let's talk about what really happened in Austria, because that crash was just the catalyst for something much bigger. Lap after lap, Max had been managing a Red Bull that simply wasn't fast enough. The RB20 that dominated early in the season had become a midfield car disguised by Verstappen's brilliance. And then Antonelli, a teenager making his debut, locked up into turn 3 and sent the championship leader spinning into the barriers. In any other season, with any other driver, you'd expect fury. Championship points evaporating because of a rookie mistake? That's career-defining frustration. But Max didn't explode. He climbed out of his destroyed car, walked over to Antonelli, and had what looked like a perfectly cordial conversation. Almost friendly. And here's where it gets interesting. Because sources inside the paddock are now suggesting that conversation wasn't just about the crash. It was about the future, about Mercedes, about what 2026 might look like under the new regulations. You see, behind the scenes, Toto Wolff has been orchestrating the most audacious driver coup in modern Formula One history. He's been in constant contact with Max's camp, and the message is clear. Mercedes is ready to build their entire 2026 project around Verstappen, but why would Max even consider it? Simple. The writing is on the wall at Red Bull. And when you look at his options, the reality is brutally simple. It's Mercedes or nowhere. Ferrari, already locked down with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, two generational talents who aren't going anywhere. McLaren, Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri are both flying and secured on long-term deals. That leaves exactly one competitive seat potentially available in the entire sport, Mercedes. But here's the bombshell that changes everything. Jos Verstappen, Max's father and closest advisor, has reportedly been pushing his son toward exactly this conclusion. The man who guided Max's career from karting to 4 world championships is now telling him that Red Bull's time is over. Adrian Newey, the design genius behind Red Bull's dominance, has already announced his departure. The internal politics between Christian Horner and Jos Verstappen have created a toxic environment that's so bad, Jos is actively advising his son to walk away. And most critically, Red Bull's struggling with their 2026 engine project, while Mercedes is reportedly miles ahead in power unit development. Act 3. The climax. Here's what no one wants to say out loud. Max Verstappen's Red Bull contract might not be worth the paper it's printed on. Yes, he's signed until 2028. But Formula One contracts are riddled with performance clauses, and Red Bull's current trajectory is triggering every single one of them. If Red Bull falls outside the top 3 in the Constructors' Championship, which is looking increasingly likely, Max has options. But here's the genius of Toto Wolff's strategy. He doesn't just want Max because he's the best driver on the grid. He wants him because Mercedes is literally the only team that can offer him what he needs. And Toto Wolff knows it. In a recent interview, Wolff was remarkably candid. "We are very transparent about what we do and what we plan. Clearly, you need to explore what's happening in the future. I can imagine every lineup. I had Rosberg and Hamilton fighting for a world championship, so everything else afterward is easy." That's not speculation. That's a man who's already mentally placed Verstappen in a Mercedes cockpit. A man who knows that when the music stops, Mercedes is the only chair left for Max to sit in. Meanwhile, George Russell has been dropped into an impossible situation. His contract talks are on hold while Mercedes courts the sport's biggest star. But rather than panic, Russell's playing it perfectly. It's only normal that conversations with the likes of Verstappen are going on. From my side, if I'm performing as I'm doing, what have I got to be concerned about? Smart, confident, but also revealing, because Russell knows something the rest of us are just figuring out. This isn't just about 2026. This is about the complete restructuring of Formula One's power balance. And the brutal mathematics of the driver market mean that Max has no choice but to make this work. Even Helmut Marko, Red Bull's notoriously combative advisor and Max's closest ally within the team, is getting nervous. His recent warning to Verstappen was telling. With us, he has a lot of freedom which he would not have with Mercedes. That's not confidence. That's desperation. Because Marko understands what's at stake. Lose Verstappen, and Red Bull becomes just another midfield team with a fancy energy drink sponsor. But here's what Marko really fears. He knows that Toto Wolff isn't just offering Max a seat. He's offering him the only seat that matters. And Wolff believes Max can extract performance from that Mercedes that no other driver has been able to match, something we've seen Max do consistently at Red Bull, even with inferior machinery. But perhaps most damaging of all, Marko knows he's fighting a war on two fronts, against Mercedes' recruitment efforts and against Jos Verstappen's influence from within Max's own camp. Act 4. Resolution and Impact. The dominoes are already falling and most people don't even realize it. George Russell is currently sitting just 9 points behind Verstappen in the championship. Think about that. A Mercedes driver, in a car that was struggling at the start of the season, is now breathing down the neck of a 4-time world champion. That's not just good driving. That's a statement. It's Russell proving to Wolff that he belongs in any conversation about elite drivers. But it's also dangerous, because if Russell actually overtakes Verstappen in the standings, it might trigger the very performance clauses that allow Max to walk away from Red Bull. The irony is delicious. Russell driving better than ever might be the thing that costs him his seat. But where does that leave everyone else? Ferrari is locked up with Hamilton and Leclerc. No movement there. McLaren has Norris and Piastri sewn up tight. The only top-tier seat available is at Mercedes, and Toto Wolff is making it very clear who he wants in it. The timeline is aggressive. Rumors suggest that by Silverstone, literally next week, we could have clarity on Mercedes' 2026 lineup. And if Verstappen commits, it doesn't just change Mercedes, it potentially destroys Red Bull's entire competitive structure. Here's what Red Bull is really afraid of. The 2026 regulations represent the biggest technical shakeup in decades. New engines, new aerodynamics, new everything. And historically, the teams that win these regulation changes are the ones with the best drivers and the best preparation. Mercedes has been planning for 2026 since 2022. Their engine development is reportedly ahead of schedule. Their technical infrastructure is world-class. Add Max Verstappen to that equation, a driver who Toto Wolff genuinely believes can extract performance that others simply cannot. And they don't just become favorites, they become inevitable. Meanwhile, Red Bull would be left scrambling. No Newey, no Verstappen, and an engine project that's already facing significant challenges. The most successful team of the current era could find themselves back in the midfield within 2 seasons. But here's what makes this story even more fascinating. It's not just about Max Verstappen anymore. The driver market's brutal mathematics mean that if Russell does get displaced, his options are limited too. But Aston Martin is already circling, and Lawrence Stroll has made it clear that he wants Russell to lead their 2026 project. Suddenly, you have a domino effect that could see 3 of the sport's biggest names switching teams simultaneously. Verstappen to Mercedes, Russell to Aston Martin, and Red Bull, they'd be left trying to rebuild their entire identity around whoever they can convince to fill the impossible void left by the sport's most dominant driver. But the harsh reality remains, Max's choice isn't between multiple top teams. It's between Mercedes and career stagnation. Ferrari's full, McLaren's locked down, Mercedes is it. And when your own father is telling you the same thing, the decision becomes even more inevitable. The Austrian Grand Prix wasn't just another race. It was the moment when Max Verstappen realized that his Red Bull story might be ending. And more importantly, it was the moment when he started seriously considering what comes next. When your options are limited to exactly one competitive seat, the negotiation becomes very different. Toto Wolff has been playing the long game for over a decade. He's watched Verstappen win 4 championships in Red Bull colors, while absolutely knowing, that Max could have been his driver all along. Now, with Red Bull's weaknesses exposed, the 2026 regulation change looming, and the driver market offering Max literally no other competitive alternatives, Wolff finally has his chance. And he's not just offering Max a seat, he's offering him the belief that only Max can unlock the true potential of that Mercedes. The negotiations are happening, the clauses are being analyzed. The future of Formula One is being rewritten in conference rooms and private conversations that we'll only learn about months from now. But if you want to know how serious this is, look at that moment in Austria again. Max Verstappen, walking away from a championship-damaging crash with a smile on his face and a friendly conversation with a Mercedes-backed rookie. That wasn't sportsmanship. That was a glimpse into a future where the most successful driver of his generation finally gets the machinery to match his talent, because it's literally the only option left. The Verstappen era at Red Bull might be ending, but the Verstappen era in Formula One, that might just be getting started, and Mercedes is the only team that can make it happen. Next time, we'll explore exactly what a Verstappen-Mercedes partnership would mean for the sport, and why it might create the most dominant combination in Formula One history. Because if you think Max has been unstoppable in a Red Bull, wait until you see what he can do with a Mercedes engine, the backing of the sport's most ruthless team principal, and the knowledge that this was literally his only path to continued greatness. The game is changing. The driver market has spoken, Jos Verstappen has spoken, and Max Verstappen might be about to change Formula One forever because he has no other choice, and everyone closest to him knows it.